Howdy, y'all. Caleb here. Last weekend was the Lonestar GT here in Dallas, Texas. This is part of our Texas Masters series of grand tournaments. And we had about 100 people here in Dallas playing Age of Sigmar. Awesome tournament, a ton of fun. Big thanks to Matt Taylor and all of you who helped put on the Lonestar GT. It was an awesome time. He produced some of these little graphics here that show us some of the just nasty, the filthy stuff that was showing up at this Lonestar GT. 140 Sentinels. That's always fun. 40 Fulminators. We've got 48 Long Strikes showing up to this tournament. 24 Storm Drake. So there are 10 Bastiladons. That's what I like to see. I contributed to that. So it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of really, really good players showing up for this GT. So let's today we're gonna kind of look at the Seraphon list is what we're gonna focus on, and we're going to look at the top 5 Seraphon lists. But there were actually only 6 Seraphon in this tournament, so let's go ahead and look at all 6 of them today. But first, who won? Let's look at who won the overall tournament, and that is Zachary Kennedy with Seraphon Thunder Lizard. Yeah, well done, Zachary. He's a longtime Seraphon player down from Houston. He's in the Harambe Hero Club, along with Gavin Greiger, who came in number 2. His name would sound familiar to some of you, as he's the one that won LVO. This time he brought out Gloomspike Gitz. Don't let that faction fool you. It does have Kragnos in it, and what looked like about 1,000 wounds worth of squigs. So a pretty awesome list. That's pretty cool to see somebody pilot Gloomspike Gitz to a 5-0 record at a big event like this. Both those guys are on the Harambe Heroes podcast, so I'll link that below. Go check them out. Hopefully they'll break down some of what happened in their games at this tournament on their YouTube channel here in the next week or so. Coming in number 3 was Jonathan Skleesis, and he was running OBR. So we had some interesting turnouts here. He also got 5-0 and piloted OBR to a great record there at Lonestar. Those are our top 3. I want to briefly hit on some of the battle plans. I think that's kind of important as you're looking at matchups. You know, one of the biggest things about doing well at a tournament is your battle plan and your matchup. If both of those are in your favor, you're going to have an easier time. If both of those are not in your favor, then you're going to have a little bit tougher time. That doesn't mean you're going to lose a game automatically based on a game type or a matchup, but some of those things can make it easy. We had a pretty good mix of game types here at Lonestar, and I like that. Got to play the Vice at a competitive level. You know, I've played it in locals and at home, but that was pretty cool to see Vice at the GT. That's a lot of fun. That was in round 3, and then our final round 5 was that Feral Foray, where you have 6 objectives. You can burn 3 of them. That one makes for a really tight game 5 as you're trying to figure out if you need to burn objectives. You've got to be able to hold a lot. You've got to be able to spread out and have some good board control. So good mix of game types there. Let's look at our Seraphon brackets here. We had one Seraphon go 5-0. That was Zachary Kennedy with Thunder Lizard. In the 4-1 bracket, we have Justin Gremminger and myself. Both of us playing Thunder Lizards. And then at 3-2, we had Sebastian, Ben, and Elijah. These are all familiar names in Seraphon. I think I've played almost all of them before. I don't think I played Justin yet, so maybe one of these tournaments we'll face off. But a lot of veteran Seraphon players showing up at this tournament, so that's good. And seeing everybody do pretty well, so that's good. Let's look at some of the lists. Our first one is Zachary Kennedy's list. He was the champion. He went 5-0, had the most battle points, and won the tournament. He is playing Thunder Lizard, and we've got Engine of the Gods as our general, with Prime War Beast, Cloak of Feathers, Beastmaster, and Curse as the prayer. And you see this loadout a lot. I think it's pretty common in that if you're making him your general, you're doing that so you get that extra Prime War Beast attacks from him. So this Engine of the Gods with that and Cloak of Feathers can move and fight very well. Sometimes you see that same loadout on a Skink Chief, but you're getting about the same amount of melee output from the engine. You don't have the command point to give yourself another attack, but a lot of times you can use that just on +1 attack or something else that you need it. So the Engine of the Gods is a fantastic melee piece, but also a wonderful support piece. Summons, heals, mortal wounds, and it's got that prayer lore of curse to help you do a ton of mortals once you get in range. So a great piece. A Slan Starmaster with Atixi Grubs and Celestial Equilibrium. That's allowing us to re-roll a spell, which is, I mean, that just makes it awesome on Slan, because there are going to be times when you're wanting to roll that Comet's Call and you roll low, or you fail it, and you get that reroll. It comes in so handy. Or if you're trying to unbind that really important spell, like a spell portal coming at you or Hand of Dust, you need to stop that and you want to reroll. That's where that artifact comes in quite handy. Here's where the list gets a little interesting. We've got a Terradon Chief with the Fusilic Conflagration, but a Terradon Chief in a Thunder Lizard list. This is interesting. If we skip down a little bit, we see that he's taken 6 Terradon Riders to pair up with that Terradon Chief. I'm going to be honest, this is the first time I've seen Terradon Riders on the table in quite some time. I guess probably since our last book when they were good. They're incredibly cheap. They're incredibly fast. They can still do some mortals. They have some terrible bravery and terrible saves, but I think they're cheap enough that you can take that chance and use them as that kind of surgical strike all the way across the board. You can run them and still do the mortals after you pass over something. And so they do have a utility that Thunder Lizard's kind of missing, that fast, mobile, I'm going to go grab that objective from a weak target, or I'm going to, just run across something that has a high armor, but I'm dumping a bunch of mortals onto it. And so it's an interesting pairing there. You're talking about 290 points for that combo of the Chief and the Riders, and I think it offers you some pretty good flexibility. And Zachary is a great player, and so I know that he has plans for all of these units in his list and knows how to position them and play them quite well. Back to the heroes, we've got a Skink Star Priest with Hand of Glory, just a fantastic spell. A Skink Priest with Guidance, and a Skink Priest with Heal. Lots of utility from those 3 little buff pieces, and especially when you've got 30 skinks, 20 skinks, and 10 skinks. So he does have 60 skinks in this list as his battle line. And, it may not be pumping out a ton of damage, not nearly as much as skinks used to, but that's still 60 wounds at -1 damage in Thunder Lizards that your opponent has to go through. And so they're going to still throw a lot of dice at people. They're going to score objectives. Most importantly, it's going to be quite a few wounds that somebody's going to have to get through. If you notice, he is taking the bolt spitters and clubs, so you're doing that maximum shooting, and you've got a lot of stuff to do in melee too. These guys will do an incredible amount of damage if you can get Curse off. If you have Curse and the Star Priest Venom Staff on them, so they're doing mortal wounds on hits of 6s and wounds of 6s in shooting and in melee. I mean, if you can get that combo to go off, now it does rely on being within 9 and getting a 4-up or a 3-up if you're within terrain prayer, but you will just obliterate things that way. I think one of the best uses there is that wound sink of 60 wounds at -1 damage is awesome. Now here's another thing. Looking down into the monsters, Bastiladon with Ark of Sotek. The trash tier Bastiladon. Somehow Zach has taken that Ark of Sotek and won a 100-person GT. I don't know. I'm hoping he does a breakdown on this because I want to know how he used it. And if it actually did anything, if he got any returns out of it. It may have just been that's how many points he had left and he wanted to include it. I don't know. Maybe he's using it to just get those monstrous actions. You can run this for Ferocious Advance pretty easily, and you're not losing anything by running it. So, man, I sure am interested. Overall, he got 2 extra artifacts because of the battalions. Lots of battalions there with a total of 12 drops. So it is very high drops, but that's fine. You're letting the opponent play their hand, and then you can react accordingly. So I imagine he had to go first a whole lot, get some shooting off, get the board control going quickly, and then react after that. So 141 wounds in Thunder Lizards is pretty nasty. That's hard to chew through. His rounds, first game, he got a win versus Lumineth Realm Lords. That was with 40 Wardens, Techless, and Severith. So a very melee-centric army. So I would imagine you would be able to pick off a lot of that before you actually get into melee. And he has enough stuff that he can counter some of the important Techless spells with that reroll. Especially if you have to go first in this one, you'd be fine because then you can get your spell buffs up before they start their spells. Round 2, he got a win versus Soulblight. It had 2 Zombie Dragons and 15 Blood Knights. That's some pretty good beef, but I would imagine he was able to outbody and out-control the board with a lot more bodies than that Soulblight list had. Round 3, a win versus Ironjaws. It was 2 Mega Crushers and 12 Gorgruntas. Your standard pig list. Those things come in hard. They come in crashing hard, but Seraphon is perfectly situated to handle Ironjaws. They pump up all their damage +1, and we go, yeah, how about you bring all that damage back down to 1? So all of a sudden those Gorgruntas aren't nearly as scary when they're only doing 1 damage instead of 2. Round 4, this was weird. We had a player who went 3-0 on the first day who had to drop on the second day, and it didn't happen until after pairings were up. His opponent just never showed. And so round 4, he basically got a bye against the Ringer. I don't want to say that sullies the championship or anything, because I have no doubt in my mind that Zachary would have beat whoever he had in round 4. But that's a shame that you had to end up playing a Ringer at the top tables. But unfortunately, that's just the way it worked. I know Brian Henderson, the owner from Texas Toy Soldier, gave him his best, but that round 4 was an odd one. And you never like to see it go down like that, but have no doubt Zachary would have crushed whoever he had gotten in round 4. So on to round 5, he did hit up against the Stormcast Eternals, and your kind of meta pick right now, which is those Fulminators and Long Strikes. Sometimes you see Dragons, but those Long Strikes kind of form the backbone of that as the damage, and then you've got some Dragon type cavalry to fill that in. So a great tournament there for Zachary, and a top player, and a great list. On to the 4-1 bracket, we had Justin's list here, also coalesced Thunder Lizards. And you'll see a lot of the same stuff popping up. I think, some of the Seraphon stuff is kind of getting the core units into those lists, and we're kind of just playing with those extra points and what we like to bring on the outsides. Now, maybe not Zachary. He was bringing some Terradons and Ark of Soteks. But the rest of us are playing some of the other stuff. Engine of the Gods, we had, as our general, Prime War Beast, Fusel the Conflagration with Curse and Beastmaster. So he's got the Fusel on the engine, which I like. It gives him a little bit of a shooting attack. This is a melee variant. You're probably going to hold it back until you can counter punch with the engine. That's how I kind of like to use it. And then send it in with Fusel and pump it up with Beastmaster and Prime War Beast, and you can have some pretty scary output in melee. Slan Starmaster with the Dixie Grubs also, Skink Priest, Skink Star Priest, and another Skink Star Priest. So we do have 2 Skink Star Priests here. Pretty good. Your standard support pieces, especially when you've got also 60 Skinks in this list. He does have some Source Guard to help protect the Slan, and then 2 Bastildons with solar engines this time. Apparently, we're supposed to be taking the Ark of Sotek. But a good list here. We've got the pieces that we want from Thunder Lizard and the 2 Bastildons. We've got our engine to support Slan, and then 60 bodies in Skinks to clog up the board. He did include Soul Snare Shackles. That's a really hard word to say. Which is cool. I'm wondering how that did, because I'm always tempted to bring that spell. I just never end up having the points, because you can really foul up somebody's day if you're able to throw that out in front of your army and prevent any types of charges against those important pieces, or against your castle. If you can throw those down and prevent something like those Ironjaws from coming in across those the schnackles, that's always really good. 10 drops, so probably going first a lot. So make sure if you are high drops, you have that plan for what you're going to do turn 1. Luckily with us, we got, these Bastillons can shoot all the way across the board usually. and Salon can do some Comet's Call. So we have some stuff we can do turn 1 if you're made to go first. His rounds, he got a win versus Daughters of Cain, had Marathi and Duralia and 15 Bloodstalkers. So those are the snakes and the Marathi, and then Duralia is a good pick for that list. I like that because it's able to snipe off some heroes. It's got a lot of good shooting, and then Marathi is going to get into you and cause problems. So that's a tough matchup, but a good win for Justin there. Round 2 was Sons of Behemoth with 4 megas in Stomper Tribe. I think as you'll see, Seraphon can do a pretty good job of handling the Sons lists, whether it's between screening or just having enough DPS to output the damage to take a mega down a turn. Between all the different things we have in our army, and we have enough range to reach out and get those giants wherever they're at, that I think we are positioned fairly well to deal with megas. Round 3 was a loss versus Soul Blights. This had a lot of wounds in it. As I was looking at that list, it had a ton of bodies. It had 40 zombies, 20 Blood Knights, and 20 Graveguard. So round 3 was the Vice, and so I'm wondering if they just completely clogged up the middle and just did not allow him into that middle objective for the rest of the game. That one can be Vice can be tough if they're able to get some big giant hordes onto those that center point, and then the objective comes to it in round is it round 4, and then you just can't score any points for 4 and 5, and so that may have been what happened. Round 4, he got another Mega Gargant list with 4 megas and Stomper Tribe, so he was able to handle that one again. Well done. And then round 5, he had a matchup versus Seraphon, and this was Sebastian's list. We'll get into it here in a minute, with a Stegodon Chief, a Bastildon, and some Croxagore. Whenever you see Thunder Lizard going up against each other, it can be interesting because you've got those Bastildons shooting at each other, and now you're halving the damage of the Bastildons against each other. And so sometimes it can turn into a little bit of a pillow fight with all of our damage reduction. Your Stegodons are back down to 1 damage. All these things that we put all these synergies into are negated by our own stuff. If it kind of feels bad. Now I know how everybody else feels when they're playing Thunder Lizard. Also 4-1. I went 4-1 with my list. We'll take a look at this. We'll break down this a lot more tomorrow. I'll have a list up tomorrow that breaks down my games. So come back for that. Thunder Lizard, Beastmaster, obviously, and my leaders, I had a Stegodon with Skink Chief, and this was my general with Prime Warbeast, obviously the Skystreak Bow, and Beastmaster. I put my artifact, I was only going 2 drops. I put my artifact on the Engine of the Gods to give it some shooting with the Fusel of Conflagration. Obviously, the prayer of Curse. My Salon Starmaster, I put Celestial Equilibrium on that. You see that spell pop up a lot. That just lets you give a +1 to your other casters. In this case, it would be Star Priest. If you're facing off against hordes, or if you've got stuff that's hurt, then switch that at the end of your first hero phase to something more useful. Also got a Skink Priest with Heal, and a Star Priest with Hand of Glory. I think those are pretty standard support pieces in Thunder Lizards. You kind of got to have those. I did take Battle Line of Source Knights. I've got 3 units of 5 Source Knights, and they're not going to put out near as much damage as Skinks. They're not as many bodies as Skinks, but I like them because I can basically screen off the entire board with them. They have a little bit better save. I can pump up that save if I need to. They can throw out some attacks if I buff them up correctly with the Star Priest, but they're there for just the big board control of screens. I also took a unit of Chameleon Skinks. Just 1 unit just to kind of help pressure those backfield objectives. Keep the other player honest and not charging forward too fast. 2 Bastildons, as is standard in Thunder Lizard. And I did take that in a double battle regiment, for as long as we still have the ability to do double battle regiments. For 2 drops, 92 wounds for my list. We can go through my win-loss record here. I got a win versus Sons of Behemoth with the 2 megas, 1 baby giant, and then Kragnos. I was a little worried about facing Kragnos in this list because it makes him very fast, but you're only talking, they've only got 4 models, and one of them's a baby Gargant. And so you're not talking a lot of board control. They can grab objectives really well with the three big boys, but they're gonna struggle on board control. Round two, I got a win versus Cities of Sigmar. This was an interesting list with a ton of dwarves. It had 80 dwarves from Dispossessed in it. They were running in Hammerhall with Celestant Prime in the list to kind of do the surgical strikes on the backfield, and the 80 dwarves would clog up the middle lane, grab objectives. Round three, I got a win versus Cities of Sigmar. This was your standard kind of 4 Fulminators, 6 Long Strikes in Cities of Sigmar. They were running some Phoenix Guard in there with it to kind of hold objectives, and a couple of foot heroes to supplement those, like Hurricanum and some other things. But your kind of standard living cities, Fulminators, and Long Strikes. Round four, I got a win versus Bone Splitters. Yep, Bone Splitters. This was a impressive list. It had 4 prophets in it, the Wargog prophets that can just do an unholy amount of mortal wounds if they rolled right. I think at this point he had done something like 100 mortal wounds through the first 3 games. He also had a Rogue Idol and various other Bone Splitters for a total of like 150 wounds or something. So it was a lot of wounds. Not real high saves, but he could get them up to some nice ward saves and stuff when he needed to. Round 5, got a loss versus OBR. Yep, OBR. That was John Scleesis' list from came in 3rd place. You're thinking OBR? Come on, Seraphon, you got this. Lots of shooting. That's what OBR isn't good at. We'll get into that tomorrow. it was a fun game. It was a good game. But he had Catacross, Archon, 40 Mortek, a Harvester, and a Crawler. So went 4-1 with that one. On to the 3 and 2 tier, we got Sebastian Dodson. He's playing Thunder Lizard also, obviously. We got Engine of the Gods. Pretty standard loadout there. Stegadon with Skink Chief. Has got Cloak of Feathers. Love that one. Extra movement, flying, and -1 to hit. 3 fantastic abilities all wrapped into one beautiful artifact. This is my go-to artifact if I'm going high drops. Wow, he only went 4 drops. If you're just going for that command entourage, I love this. It's either that or a Tixie Grubs. It's just like tugging at me. Which one do I want to take? Which one do I want to take? If you're taking a Stegadon Chief, fantastic pick for that. Slon Star Master with Stellar Tempest to bust some hordes up with that spell. Got a Skink Star Priest, 2 Priests, both with one with Heal, one with Guidance. Also great picks. Some Source Guard to protect your Slon, 5 Source Knights, and 30 Skinks. He's also got 3 Croxagore in this. Sebastian likes to run these Croxador, and he's done pretty well with them. And I think we might see some Croxagore popping up more and more as some of these Horde armies become more prevalent. A lot of Soul Blight out there, and they're running a lot of these hordes, and Croxagore will come in and just absolutely obliterate those hordes. So that's a fun pick there with those 3 Croxagore. Behemoths, we got a Bastiladon with Solar Engine, of course. That's pretty much a requirement. Just about every Thunder Lizard list, you're going to see an Engine and a Bastiladon, and probably a Star Priest. But those things a lot of these things are pretty common in Thunder Lizards. So his addition there, I think, of the Croxagore is kind of what makes his list unique. We've got round 1. He faced off against Lumineth Realm Lords with Teclis, Avalanor, and Stoneguard. Man, I would have loved to watch this game. I don't think I've seen Stoneguard on the table ever. I didn't get a chance to see that army. I bet it looked pretty cool, but great job on the win there, because Stoneguard, I know they can be hard to shift, and they can shift you pretty good once they get into combat, but we have enough range. We can probably reach out and take off some of those elite units before they get to us. Round 2, you got a win versus Stormcast Eternal. That's 4 Fulminators, 6 Long Strikes, 2 Stormdrake. So this person wasn't just content with the standard 1 unit of Fulminators and Long Strikes. They also got Fulminators, Dragons, and Long Strikes. Well done. Nice fitting that into a list. But Sebastian was able to handle that one well. Good job. Round 3, we had a loss versus Nurgle. This is an interesting Nurgle list. It was piloted by a good player. It's Gut Rot Spume and 10 Putrid Blight Kings. So that's a lot of deep strike capability there. That's a lot of beef showing up somewhere in your territory right on top of you, and it's gonna be hard to shift those guys right there. Also had Glotkin and 20 Plague Bears. That is also a lot to try to shift. So I can understand why this was a tough matchup here. That's 128 wounds on paper, but everything in that army has a 5-up save. Glotkin, I think Glotkin can give those Plague Bears extra wounds, so that's more wounds than 128. So I would imagine round 3 was the Vice. You know, we saw another Seraphon player lose on the Vice there, and it was I bet that those guys got in that middle objective and really took it to them. Spume may have made a play for one of the side objectives on your side in the Vice. That could have been tough to deal with too. Round 4, win versus Stormcast Eternal. That was Bastion, some more long strikes, and 6 Grand Hammer Annihilators. So make sure if you're going up against Annihilators, screen those guys out. Keep your stuff more than 3 inches behind your screens so that those mortals don't pop when those Grand Hammers hit. The Grand Hammers will kill just about anything they hit. Luckily, we do reduce their damage down 1, so that makes them not quite as potent. Round 5, we got a loss versus Thunder Lizard. This was Justin's list we looked at earlier. Double Bastildon, 60 Skinks. A lot of bodies there on that one. And Justin may have had a little bit more board control with the amount of bodies that he had than maybe Sebastian did. I would have been interested to see his Kroxigor go to the Skinks. Of course, I guess Kroxigor are going to go down to 1 damage, so not quite as good at killing hordes of your fellow lizardmen. All right, Ben Riddle's list. He also went 3 and 2. Thunder Lizard, Engine of Gods with Fusel Conflagration, Beastmaster, and Curse. Are we seeing a pattern here? Most of these lists have Engine of Gods in them, in a similar loadout here. We got a Skink Priest with Heal, Slon Starmaster as your general with Arcane Might and Stellar Tempest. So we are taking the Slon as a general. I like that pick with Arcane Might, so you can get the better casting and rerolls there. So that's a good one for the Slon. It is risky taking the general, but I've done that before too, where you take your Slon as your general. They might get Slay the Warlord, but a lot of times if it's on your Engine of Gods, your engine is in melee also anyway, so they might get Slay the Warlord that way. You just do have to be careful about those armies that have the ability to reach out and snipe the Slon off the board and position them well so you don't lose that Slay the Warlord battle tactic pretty quick. He had 20 Skinks and 20 Skinks. Got some good bodies there. And a Stegodon also as your 3rd battle line. I love me some Stegodons there. And, 2 units of 2 Salamanders. So he used his other reinforcement points. He used 2 reinforcement points on the units of Skinks and then 2 reinforcement points on these unit of Salamanders. So he's got a lot of good mortal output there with those Salamanders. You can't quite get them where you want them to as easily in Thunder Lizards, but they're still a fantastic pick in Thunder Lizards. They're harder to kill here. Just make sure you have a command point to spend to keep that bravery from being a detriment to your army as they have a lower bravery in Thunder Lizards. But those guys can really punch out some hurt and mortal wounds. We also got a Bastildon, of course, with Solar Engine. And all of that's wrapped up in a battle regiment. Well done, fitting all that into a battle regiment for a 1-drop list. That's impressive right there. I like that 1-drop. You're going to get to determine priority most of the time, and that's good because then you can get those Salamanders in range turn 1. I only see 1 Skink Priest. Oh, I would be really tempted to get at least 1 more Skink Priest, maybe 2. To put those that run, shoot, and charge on the Salamanders as well as the Bastildon. It'd be hard to fit it in there, especially if you're going for 1-drop. But that I bet it was a hard decision every turn who to put that Skink Star Priest buff onto. But great list, Ben. I think last time we had played, you were playing some Carnosaurs, like 4 Carnosaurs. So I like that you have now joined the Thunder Lizard side. Welcome. His games, round 1, win versus Iron Jaws is Mega Maw Crusher with 12 Gorgruntas and a Rogue Idol. Tough list there, lots of beef. So good job clearing that one off. Round 2, got a win versus Iron Jaws again. Double Iron Jaws lists here. 20 brutes and Kragnos. Ouch. Those brutes, if they get into you, they will hurt. Round 3, a loss versus Bone Splitters. This is that 4 Prophets, Rogue Idol, 150 wounds. It's a good list, and it can do a ton of mortals. If the turns go right and they get those Prophets in range, they're going to mortal bomb you to death. Round 4, win versus Stormcast Eternal, 4 Fulminators, 4 Stormdrake and Bastion. Round 5, took a loss to Ogre and Maw tribes. This is a list run by Brian Lofton, also on the Harambe Heroes podcast. Those guys do pretty well at this Age of Sigmar thing. He's running 4 Iron Blasters. Whew. It's quite a bit of shooting. It's a crazy list. It can reach out and really touch it from across the board when you wouldn't expect that from the Ogre Maw tribes. Iron Blasters. And last up, we got Elijah Ramos. He's our lone Fangs of Sotek player. His grand strategy is prize sorcery, so keep a wizard alive. And his general is Lord Croak. An interesting pick. I've played Elijah before. I think I've played everybody that we've talked about so far, other than Justin. So he's taking Lord Croak as his general, just to keep him alive. He's usually near the back of the board, funneling his spells through the Star Priests or through Engine of the Gods with Arcane Tome here. But so that way he's Slay the Warlord's kind of hard to do against him unless you can put a ton of damage into him. And so he's usually going to get that prize sorcery as long as he keeps Croak alive. He's got Engine of the Gods with Artifact Arcane Tome. So now he's now a wizard, and you can funnel Croak's spells through the Engine of the Gods since it's a skink wizard now with that Arcane Tome. Mount Trade of Starborn, spell Celestial Harmony, and Universal Prayer Heal. Does he have Curse anywhere in this list? How do you not run a Curse? Where's Curse? Curse is just so good. It looks like he's just trying to keep his Engine of the Gods alive. He's tapping in for that summon, not for the summoning, for the heals from the engine, and then getting the prayer heal also. So trying to keep it alive as long as possible to funnel Croak spells. Astrolith Bear with Serpent God Dagger. That's the one that, if it does some damage, it can kill somebody straight up. But you don't really want that guy in melee, so you have to take that artifact. Skink Priest with Heal, Star Priest with Hand of Glory. We've got 40 Skinks total, and 5 Source Guard to help protect Croak. And then 2 Bastiladons, and Burning Head. Lots of drops, 10 drops, 114 wounds. He has been running 2 Bastiladons in Fangs of Sotek for a little while. And I think from the last time I had played him, I think, it looks like he's probably just lost the unit of Salamanders that he had. With some of the point increases and stuff, he had to phase those guys out. But a good list here. I was talking to him a little bit, and I think this may have been his last foray for Lord Croak. He's been running him for a little while, and I think he's going to downgrade back to the Salon just for the efficiency of the points and not quite getting off the amount of damage he wanted out of Croak. I think he said he miscast Croak twice this tournament, which, when you're casting that many spells, it's going to happen. It's just, it's terrible when you've got a lot invested into Lord Croak and, he goes and miscasts on the first spell on a critical turn. You've lined up all your buffs you need, and then bam, Snake Eyes. And that's always a feel bad. It's what it feels like when you are a Nagash player, I think. All right, he did get a loss versus that same Nurgle list in round 1. That Spume, 10 PBKs, Glotkin, lots of wounds, and just not able to get enough output to get past all those ward saves and all those bodies. Round 2, got a win versus Skaven. This was a lot of bodies. Now, they're not nearly as tough as Nurgle until they get a new book. So 90 rats, 4 rattling guns. It was 157 wounds, but was able to handle that one. Round 3, got a win versus Khorne with Scarbrand, 2 Bloodthirsters, 20 Fleshhounds. That's always fun when you see Khorne lined up across the table because those Bastiladons are going to go ham on those Bloodthirsters. Oh, man. Corn, one of these days, Corn is gonna return to being a terror on the table with those bloodthirsters. It was, there for about a month or two when those bloodthirsters were just tearing through everything before their FAQ. Well, that was like a year and a half ago, maybe. But now there's just too much shooting. Round 4, win versus Lumineth Realm Lords, tech list, 30 Sentinels, 30 Wardens. A pretty balanced Lumineth list I saw. And so that's a good win there for Elijah. And round 5 got a loss versus Stormcast Eternal. This was Bastion, 20 Vindicators, and 15 Liberators. This was a Stormkeep list. If you look down at the battle plan for round 5, it was 6 objectives, and you can burn the other players. So this would be an incredibly hard list to shift, as it's a Stormkeep, and so it's each one of those 35 models are worth 3 on objectives in that game for Stormcast. So that makes it really, really hard to shift those models. So yeah, good stuff though for Elijah. I did if you're downgrading Croak to Slann, just come on over to the Thunder Lizard. All right, let's quickly look at versus the meta. The meta is always changing, but I think right now, Storm Drake Guard, Fulminators, Long Strikes, that's kind of what a lot of people are planning for. Can you beat that? Can you deal with it? And apparently we can do it pretty well. We had 5 matchups versus Storm Drake, Fulminators, Long Strikes, and won them all. That was a perfect 5-0 win versus those. And so I think our ability to screen the board, kind of control the board, and then counter punch once you've dropped those long strikes, or once you've charged in your big piece, we can counter charge. I think we're able to deal with that Stormcast meta pick fairly well right now. Seraphon versus Mega Gargants. Also, we had 3 matchups and we went 3-0 versus the Mega Gargants. And so I think it's kind of the same thing. We have a good enough board control and decent enough output in our army that we can deal with the big megas as they're coming across the board trying to grab objectives. The one area we didn't do well in was versus Nurgle. We had 2 matchups. It was both against that same player, but there wasn't really a whole lot of Nurgle. Both of those were losses, and so we may have to look at ways that we can deal with Nurgle as it becomes more prevalent. There's a lot of wounds and good ward saves across that entire army, and so we may have to look at ways that we can deal with Nurgle in upcoming videos. We'll look at how to deal with Nurgle. So that's the Lonestar Seraphon lists. We had 6 of us. Everybody did pretty well. Our lowest rank was, I think, 36, somewhere in there out of 100 players. So Seraphon is making a great showing. Definitely with the 5-0 win for Zachary. Well done on that. We had a couple 4-1s and a couple 3-2s, and everyone played very well. So great job for all the lizard men here in Texas, and keep it up. All right, that's it for the list review for Lonestar GT. We'll catch you guys later.